Imagine this. You're in a room full of people, voices clashing, opinions thrown like daggers, laughter ringing hollow, arguments flaring like wildfires, everyone speaking, screaming, asserting their identity through noise. But in the corner, someone watches. They say nothing, they don't need to. Eyes sharp as blades, posture still as a mountain, silent, unreadable, immovable. While the others bleed themselves dry trying to be heard, this one remains untouched yet utterly in control. Something in their silence unsettles the loudest in the room. It's not absence, it's presence. Not passivity, but restraint with the weight of a storm held in check. Now ask yourself, why does silence disturb us more than noise? Why do we panic in its presence, rushing to fill it with words, excuses, nervous laughter? Is it because silence threatens to reveal too much about us, about others? Because it strips away the camouflage of language and forces the raw psyche into view? You've been taught all your life that communication is key, that you must speak to be known, to defend yourself, to win. But what if everything you've been told is a trap? What if speaking is not always strength but exposure? What if every word you throw out is a card you reveal and silence is the only way to keep the full hand hidden? Nietzsche once said, "Silence is worse. All truths that are kept silent become poisonous." But there is another silence, not the silence of repression, but the silence of strategy. The silence that outsmarts. The silence that waits. The silence that watches, absorbs, calculates and strikes without warning. Not with volume, but with precision. What if power doesn't lie in articulation, but in absence, not in answers, but in refusal? Look at history's most enigmatic minds. The mystic who says nothing and is revered as divine, the general who outmaneuvers without revealing his plan, the stoic lover whose detachment inflames obsession, the politician who wins the room by speaking last or not at all. There is something ancient and terrifying in silence, something our modern world, drunk on constant stimulation, no longer knows how to face. Could it be that silence is not emptiness but containment, not ignorance but control? Could it be that to speak is often to serve, to entertain, to surrender fragments of your soul while silence preserves your power intact? And here is the terrifying twist. What if you've been giving yourself away with every sentence you speak, every argument you win, every explanation you offer, every time you clarify what you meant? What if those are not victories but little deaths? So now imagine this. What if the path to freedom, power and clarity is not in saying more, but in mastering the art of saying nothing? But how deep does this go? What internal mechanism makes us so desperate to speak, to explain, to assert? What buried fear do we think we can silence with sound? And why does Nietzsche, that prophet of the abyss, hint that the ultimate weapon might not be the sword or the word, but the silence before the storm? Let's go deeper. Let's descend into psychology, philosophy, the soul of this idea. Because the real battle isn't about speaking or staying quiet. It's about who owns the silence and what waits inside it. We are addicted to noise, not just the external chatter of voices, notifications, media and opinion, but the internal compulsion to assert ourselves through sound. Somewhere deep within you, a voice screams to be heard. It whispers when you're quiet, festers in the silence, claws at the walls of your mind. But have you ever stopped to ask, why do I need to speak at all? The truth is, your voice is rarely about the message. It's about the fear of being forgotten, the terror of non-existence. And in that terror, we speak not to communicate, but to prove I am still here. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." Speaking is often the fastest escape from inner confrontation. Words are the mask. Silence is the mirror. From the moment you were born, you were rewarded for making sound. Crying brought attention. Speaking earned praise. Silence, on the other hand, brought discomfort. "What's wrong?" they'd ask if you were too quiet. Speak up. Use your words. And slowly, a subconscious association was built. Silence equals danger, invisibility, disconnection. So you learned to talk, not just to communicate, but to survive. You built an identity from noise. But what if that identity is a lie? Nietzsche didn't see silence as emptiness. He saw it as will, a kind of pure, distilled intention. In a world where most people react, the one who can remain silent chooses. In that choice is supreme agency. Yet society punishes the silent. We label them as cold, arrogant, aloof, or dangerous. Because silence resists being controlled. You can manipulate someone who needs to be heard, but how do you control someone who refuses to speak? Arthur Schopenhauer believed that most conversation is a mere game of vanity and dominance. He wrote, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone. When around others, we become actors. We speak what is expected, what is acceptable, what garners approval. Silence, however, resists performance. It refuses applause. It defies the script. And that makes it deeply threatening not just to others, but to the fragile self we have constructed through performance. There is a deeper layer still. In psychological terms, silence challenges the ego. The ego wants to be right. It wants to be seen, validated, praised. Speaking allows the ego to exist. Silence suffocates it. Jean-Paul Sartre, the philosopher of radical freedom, said, "Hell is other people, but hell is also the self that cannot shut up, the self addicted to being someone." Silence offers liberation from that addiction, but it's a painful detox. Viktor Frankl, who survived the Holocaust, wrote about finding meaning in suffering. But part of that meaning came in knowing when to speak and when to withhold. He observed that those who maintained dignity in the camps often communicated more through presence than through pleading. In situations of extremity, language breaks. Only silence remains, and sometimes it says more than words ever could. So, here's the hidden problem. You think silence is weakness, but in reality, your compulsion to speak is the real vulnerability. It's a tell, a leak in your psyche. And worse, it's been engineered by systems that profit from your noise, social media algorithms, political theater, ideological battles. The louder you are, the more predictable you become. The more predictable, the easier to control. And yet, you feel it, don't you? The moment before you speak in a room full of people, that flicker of awareness, that quiet voice asking, "What if I didn't? What if you simply watched, observed, refused the game? What would happen then? Who would you become? And more terrifying, what might you discover about the others and yourself once the noise dies?" You think you're speaking to connect, to be understood. But every time you speak reflexively, every time you rush to explain, to defend, to insert yourself, you are giving something away. Not just information, power. The brain is a prediction machine. It thrives on patterns, cues, and tells. Neurologically, we are wired to extract meaning from behavior, especially from language. In every sentence you utter, your values, fears, insecurities, and intentions leak out like steam from a cracked pipe. People don't need to be geniuses to read you. They just need to watch you talk long enough. And they are watching. Every room is a silent algorithm scanning you for weak points. What makes you flinch? What triggers a reaction? What subjects tighten your voice or cloud your gaze? You think you're being articulate, but you're being scanned. Now imagine the one who speaks little or not at all. The one who leaves gaps. They become a puzzle. Their silence denies you patterns. Their stillness defies prediction. In that ambiguity, they become powerful because humans fear what they cannot map. In game theory, unpredictability is a weapon. In social psychology, it's a form of dominance. And in warfare, psychological or otherwise, the one who speaks last often wins. But here is the trap you've fallen into. You have been programmed to equate silence with absence. The culture you swim in, fast, performative, addicted to stimulus, has created a false reality where visibility is currency. If you don't speak, post, react, engage, you feel erased, forgotten, like a ghost in a world of holograms. But this is the consequence they never told you. By constantly inserting yourself, you have become transparent. The more you speak, the more predictable you become. The more predictable, the more manipulable. The more manipulable, the more powerless. Cognitive biases intensify this illusion. The illusion of transparency. You believe others understand your intentions when you speak. They don't. They only see what your nervous system betrays. The spotlight effect makes you believe everyone is focused on you, analyzing every word. They aren't. But your ego thinks they are, so you over-explain, over-defend, over-speak, and in doing so, expose yourself even further. Then there's confirmation bias. The more you talk, the more you cling to your views, not because they're true, but because you've already committed to them aloud. You trap yourself with your own voice, and here is where it becomes existential. When your identity is built through language, through constant expression, silence becomes annihilation. If no one hears you, who are you? If you don't explain yourself, do you even exist? You feel the panic rise when no one responds, when your words land in silence, when you resist speaking and the void yawns open. That void is the self beneath the noise, the self that has never been confronted, the self you've been hiding behind 1,000 clever sentences. But the longer you avoid silence, the more it haunts you. It appears in your anxiety, in your burnout, in your inability to sleep without a screen buzzing nearby. It appears in relationships where endless talking replaces intimacy. It appears in your mind, where the internal monologue never shuts up because it's terrified of what might be found when it does. You want peace, you want power. But you've been chasing it through noise, through clever arguments, through being right. You've mistaken volume for influence, mistaken presence for noise, and the cruel irony, the most dangerous ones in the room are the quietest. Not because they're absent, but because they know something you don't. They're watching, listening, waiting. And if you're honest, you already know that. You've felt it. Now ask yourself, if silence is this powerful, why have you been running from it your entire life? It begins with a refusal to explain yourself, a refusal to participate in the performance, a refusal to be predictable, to be read, to be consumed. This is not about muting your voice, it's about reclaiming it. You are not discarding language, you are unlearning its misuse. This is the rebellion, strategic silence. To break free, you must first confront the lie that your worth is proportional to your visibility, that your identity requires constant affirmation, that if you do not speak, you do not matter. This is the first prison, and you've been living in it with the door wide open. Start small. When someone asks you a question designed to provoke, don't bite. When someone tries to dominate a space with their voice, hold yours like a blade under the table. When the urge to interrupt, to explain, to correct rises like a storm in your chest, wait. Let them reveal themselves. Watch how quickly people unravel when denied the echo they seek. You must learn the art of active silence. This is not passivity. It is awareness sharpened to a point. In this space, you read the room like a script. Every twitch, every pause, every crack in the voice is data. The less you say, the more you see. And as your visibility shrinks, your perception expands. This is your first taste of real power, perceptual sovereignty. Think of Miyamoto Musashi, the undefeated swordsman who mastered not just the blade, but the mind. He rarely spoke before battle. He used silence to destabilize opponents before a single strike was thrown. Think of Marcus Aurelius, the emperor-philosopher, who wrote private meditations in the quiet of dawn, reminding himself that the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. Think of Frida Kahlo, who in her silence painted pain louder than any scream. Think of the Zen monks who trained for years to master the art of non-reactivity. They sit, they wait, they let the world fall apart around them, and they do not flinch. This is not submission, it is supreme command over the self. It is resistance in its most elemental form. The modern world weaponizes urgency. Everything is now. Everyone is reactive. The media provokes. The algorithms amplify. The loudest wins the feed. But if you step outside that storm, if you refuse to feed it, you become unreadable, untrackable, unbothered. This is not detachment born from numbness, but from clarity. You are not silence. You wield it. There will be consequences. People will call you cold, arrogant, guarded. Let them. You are not here to be understood. You are here to see clearly. Every accusation reveals their dependency on your predictability. Let your silence hold up a mirror. Most won't like what they see. This rebellion will isolate you. Good? Power is not built in crowds. Power is built in solitude, in discomfort, in the long hours where you resist the urge to break your own code. This is where the real ones are made, in the furnace of self-restraint. Eventually, the world will notice. Your silence will speak louder than their noise. They will lean in, desperate to interpret the message you never sent. And when you choose to speak, your words will land like thunder, not because they are loud, but because they are earned. This is not the silence of fear. This is the silence of discipline, of sovereignty, of war strategy. It is the weapon the world forgot, and now it's in your hands. Here it is. The silence that disturbed you was never external. It wasn't the quiet room. It wasn't the unreadable face across the table. It wasn't the long pause in a conversation or the refusal to respond. It was you, your own unspoken truths echoing in the chambers of your mind. The silence you feared was your own. That's the final revelation. Silence is not a void. It's a confrontation. And most people aren't afraid of being unheard. They're afraid of what they'll hear when they stop speaking. You've spent your life talking, explaining, performing, not to express yourself, but to outrun yourself. Every sentence was a thread spun to distract from the abyss you sensed, but never named. And yet it waited, patiently, beneath the noise. Because silence doesn't chase you, it beckons. It offers no comfort, no validation, no applause. Just clarity. Unforgiving, unsanitized clarity. But within that stillness lies the most dangerous freedom. The freedom to meet yourself without disguise. You see it now, don't you? Silence was never about power over others. That was a stepping stone, a necessary illusion. The real weapon is power over self. The ability to sit in the fire of your own unspoken truth and not flinch. The ability to withhold your reaction not out of fear but out of mastery. The ability to choose your words not to control others, but because you no longer need to be understood by them. This is the final transformation. You become a sovereign being, not immune to the world, but no longer owned by it. You can walk into chaos without being touched. You can be insulted and remain unmoved. You can watch others unravel in their hunger to be seen, to be right, to be loud, and feel nothing but a stillness that terrifies them. You've stopped playing the game. You are the silence they can't decode. And here's the most haunting truth of all. Silence is the original language. Before the first word was spoken, there was presence, pure, undiluted awareness. The baby, newly born, sees without language. The mystic in meditation experiences truth beyond concept. The dying man on his final breath understands something no words can capture. In these moments all speech dissolves, only silence remains, and in that silence there is no argument, no ego, no need, only truth. Nietzsche, whose mind danced on the edge of madness and genius, did not just suggest silence as a tactic. He hinted at something deeper, that silence is the realm beyond morality, beyond opinion, beyond the herd. It is where the Übermensch is forged, not in applause or recognition, but in solitude, in the wilderness of thought where no one can reach you, where you become your own God, your own judge, your own meaning. This is the place you feared, and it is the place you must go. So here you are now. The noise has faded, the masks are off, the war of words is over. What remains is you, raw and real, standing in the vastness of your own inner terrain. No one is coming to validate you. No one is coming to explain you. There will be no applause, only the echo of your own breath. And if you can stand there in that sacred stillness without reaching for a single word, then you have already won. You are not silent. You are free.